But how do you do segmentation? If you come across many textbooks, they'll in fact give you a range of different approaches you can adopt for market segmentation. So let me just run through them, make a comment on them, and suggest how they can be used in segmentation. The first one here, it reminds me of a story of many years ago when I was asked to attend a meeting with the managing director of a paint manufacturing company, and he was wanting to discuss strategy. So the first question that was put to him was, how do you segment your market? Well, he thought for a moment, and being a paint manufacturer, he then started to say, well, we've got white paint, red paint, green paint, blue paint. We've got gloss paint, matte paint, emulsion. We've got big tins, small tins, flat tins, round tins. And by this stage, of course, he knew he was going into a territory which is not where we were wanting to go. And you'll have recognized what he was actually describing were the products and services that he was selling into a market in order to win business from customers. That is not segmentation. But we can actually use what customers buy and understanding what their preferences are around the products and services, even around the advertising that they see and respond to. We can use the insights like those to really help us understand what are the drivers for that particular customer in making the choices they make. And in that, we'll also look at, well, what, for example, they are not happy about. Because that will also give us some further insights into what their real requirements are. So we don't let products drive our segmentation, lead it. What we let it do is help us in our segmentation. In consumer markets, a very popular approach is, of course, demographics. And what they're saying there, if we use age for an example, is that when you reach the age of 30 or 40 or 50, all of a sudden you change. You throw out your wardrobe and you start all over again. Because when you're 30, you do not do what you did when you were 20. The same when you're 30, 40, 50, and even 60. You change. Now, it's profoundly untrue, of course. It's not the way the world operates anymore today. It may have done many decades ago when there seemed to be certain stereotypes with age groups, but that just doesn't happen now. If you look at what people in their 60s and 70s are doing, they're throwing themselves out of planes with parachutes, they're kayaking, they're water rafting, they're doing all sorts of things that strictly age says you shouldn't be doing. We wear clothes which depict the era we grew up in. Kids today don't necessarily wear the clothes of today, they wear the clothes of yesteryear in some instances. It just doesn't work, not anymore. But what we can use the demographics for is to help us identify what customers may be like within a particular segment. So we can perhaps use age, socioeconomic groups, to help us identify membership of a segment. So once again, demographics doesn't lead segmentation, but we can use it to help us in our segmentation. Geography, another popular approach. Simplistically, it could be north, south, east, west, inner town, outer town, suburbia, whatever. And of course, if you're really clever, you'll use postcodes. I have a difficulty with postcodes, just simply by looking down my own street, which is a postcode in its own right, as most streets are. We don't all drive the same cars. We don't all walk round wearing the same clothes. We don't even have the same plants in our gardens. I doubt that we all eat the same food, watch the same films on television, or go out to the same places. We are different. We're not a stereotype by our postcode. We cannot therefore describe segments by postcodes. What we can do, though, yet again, is use postcodes to help us identify where segments may be found. So it's a supporting item to segmentation. It shouldn't lead our segmentation. Another approach could be the size of customer. Sometimes we see this when we're doing projects in B2B. So they'll have big customers, medium-sized customers, and small customers. It could be a little more sophisticated than that, but let's keep it very simple. Now, from my own experience, I can tell you that it's not always the case that a big customer will be different to a medium-sized customer in their preferences and priorities in terms of the products and services they're wanting to buy. And yet again, we can use it, though, to help us identify potential segment membership. So we may have a segment within which we find a lot of large-sized businesses, another where we find a lot of medium-sized businesses. But that's its true place in segmentation. It's a supporting role, not a leading role. Another one in B2B would, of course, be SIC code, Standard Industrial Classification. Now, what that is saying is that you in your company and all your competing companies are all the same. You buy products and services for your own use within your companies in exactly the same way. Perhaps they're even saying you're structured the same way. But that is profoundly and obviously untrue. Yet again, it can be used to help in segmentation. It's just wrong to use it to lead segmentation. So it could very well be that in certain segments you find particular sizes of industry or particular types of industry. And that's how it should be used. As I say, not to lead, but to support segmentation. Another approach that's sometimes done in consumer markets is what you could get if you handed your project over. And in this case, I'm using an example from a project that was in fact handed over to an advertising agency. Now, particularly useful to them is, of course, psychographics, out of which they can develop really quite good advertising. But that's not what segmentation is just about. It's much more than that. And this is an example of a segment description. It is word for word an extract from a segmentation project undertaken by an advertising agency. It was wrong in the first place, may I say, to hand it over to the advertising agency, but this was an example of the output. Now, it's not necessary to go through all the various bullet points here, but I draw your attention to the penultimate bullet point. If you just read that, what does it tell you? What does it tell you should do to win this segment? Well, of course you should offer the products and services that best suit their needs. Isn't that what it's all about? It should not say it in that particular way. It should be telling us, well, what should I be doing? What should be the products and services I should be putting together? Give me the indicators of what I should be doing. It tells me nothing that is really useful for a successful marketing strategy for whatever this particular segment is. And the brand should say something about me? Please, we really need something much more concrete than that to help us structure a strategic marketing plan around segments. There is a key question then that we should be asking when we segment a market. It's not how we in our companies segment the market. It doesn't matter. It's how do the customers segment. And the observation we put there is one that's applicable to you and to me, be as individual consumers out there in the market or as people in businesses buying products and services for our companies. What we buy are the products and services that best meet the needs that we have at a price that represents superior value for money. And let me emphasize that last point does not mean it has to be the cheapest. Far from it. So if you want a definition of marketing, that's what we would offer in terms of a definition. And you will see at the heart of it is needs. We need to segment customers around the needs that they have, because it's only by satisfying those needs, as is pointed out in the observation, that we can successfully win their business, particularly if we can do it at a better price than anybody else. Just as an exercise, try this with a group of colleagues at work. Now, this is a very simple exercise. It's about holiday preferences. It's very simple because all I've used are two dimensions, a vertical and a horizontal axes. And those axes are just picking out two possible criteria that you may have for your main holiday this next year. And just to explain them, on the axis going up the page, we have relaxing, at the bottom we have active. Now, what do I mean by that? A relaxing holiday is one where they actually meet you at the door, they drive you to the aircraft, they take you off the aircraft at the other end, take you to your hotel, take you to your room, they bring the meals to your room, they bring the drinks to your room. You really do not have to do anything. It is a totally relaxing holiday. The opposite end of that is the active holiday. This is where you climb mountains, scale ridiculous peaks, go kayaking, white water rafting, all these sorts of activities, at the end of which, when you come home, what you actually need is a holiday. So there's two extremes. Look along the other axis, and I've put two alternatives there that are diametrically opposed to each other. One is buying an all-inclusive pre-packaged product, so you literally just say to a travel agent to go online, you say, that's the package I want. It includes everything in it. At the other extreme is the package that you actually put together yourself. You buy the plane, you buy the hotel space, you buy your cars, you buy all the things you want to do, and you put it together yourself. So what you want to do in this exercise with your colleagues is just position yourself on those two axes and then say which of those four quadrants you actually fall into. So if you wanted a relaxing holiday, and there will be degrees of it, I realise that, but if you want a holiday that's more relaxing than active, you're up in the upper part. If you want one that's more pre-packaged for you than you put together yourself, you're over on the left-hand side. And that particular combination will put you in the top left box. So now you've done that exercise and you've positioned yourself in one of those particular quadrants, just see how many people fall into each of those quadrants. For undertaking this exercise, just as a bit of fun in the many workshops we run, it always is the case that in one or possibly two of those quadrants, you only find very, very few and sometimes no people at all. And if you were a business in the holiday world and you wanted to target people now, and those were the buying criteria, and yes, they are simplified, there are certainly more, but if those were the buying criteria, you now have some key indications of how you should target your particular offer to particular types of customers in the market. And if all you did was to target everything at that center point and try and be all things to all people, but there are others out there targeting those quadrants with very specific offers, then you're going to lose. And what that exercise will also say to you, particularly when you find that there are some of these quadrants in which there are very few, if any, people, is that sometimes there may be a segment you don't want to serve simply because there's too few people in it.